Regulation Recommendations. Algiers, the 29th of December. I read in the regulations of the race that on board each car there shall be at least one automatic weapon with plenty of ammunition, and, further on, that each car shall carry 15 liters of water for each passenger, plus an amount of water equal to 1.5 times that contained in the radiator. The same regulation states that each passenger must carry at least 2 days' worth of provisions, in addition to those necessary for the day's stage, and warns that at the stage point of Bidon V, in the middle of the Sahara, water will be available in very scarce quantities, at the price of 70 French francs per litre. Anticipating that the competitors will not always have enough to sleep in a bed, the advice is given to equip oneself with at least 2 blankets and a sleeping bag or feather, and emphasized that one must take absolute care not to drink water that has not been boiled for a long time or effectively made sterile. It should not be a very comfortable journey, given that breakfast in the morning will normally be eaten on board the vehicles, while they are in motion, nor will it be a picnic, given that it is advisable not to bathe except in spring water, to avoid serious dangers, not to enter the forest or brousser without a guide, as one gets lost very easily, and to take quinine regularly against malaria. In dealings with the natives, I read further on, try to reward with small gifts for services rendered by them. What might the small gifts consist of? Perhaps in bits of cotton, in glass necklaces, in mirrors? Has Africa remained Africa? The same regulation stipulates that every car must have a medicine chest so overflowing with medicines that it would fill a village pharmacy. Everything from antiscorpionic serum to antivipericserum, from aureomycin to aspirin tablets. Travelers are advised to keep their legs, arms and face permanently smeared with creams against mosquito bites, and warned, however, that there is no cream worth mere oil. Imagine the faces of those who will follow this advice to the letter. Imagine what they will look like after 50 days of ablutions with petroleum. The 1st. Algiers, the 29th of December. It's raining. The great adventure began this morning, 40 cars in the race from the Mediterranean to Cape Town, 16,000 kilometers through deserts, swamps, forests, fords, will renew in Africa the great adventure of the Peking to Paris and the 1906 round-the-world race, the newspapers write. In reality, except for what the newspapers say, Algiers is completely unaware of the rallye. This morning, at the start given to 4 competitors, there were no more than 50 people present. Very little is known about the rallye, after all, even at the Automobile Club of the province of Algiers. I go there, find a bellboy in a long dark corridor. Is this where, I ask, you can get news about the rallye Mediterraneo, Cape Town? The good man has never heard of anything like it. Try, he says, to hear at that counter over there. At the counter over there, really, the thing is not entirely new, they must have heard of it somehow. A guy who lives at such and such a street, such and such a number, may know something more, they tell me. If we are not mistaken, he should in fact be one of the race commissioners. He is, fortunately, albeit an amateur, since his real profession must be that of junk dealer. I find the man in a melancholic tenement between Casbah and Modern City, at the last flight of a filthy staircase lividly lit by a skylight. I slowly ascend the slimy steps, retracting with disgust the hand that I occasionally place on the greasy railing, which I imagine has been touched by countless grubby hands of middlemen, traffickers and drug dealers. The commissioner lives in a dusty room, among 4 or 5 sleeping cats lying among junk. He is also asleep, it seems to me. I see him shaking at the tinkling of the metal pipes which, banging as the door opens, act as a bell. Sordid ambience, taken as it were from a Duvivier film. This commissioner has only an incomplete list of competitors scribbled by hand. You can copy it, if you like, he says. I give up, not least because the stench of cat feces is overwhelming. I descend again, carefully keeping away from the railing and the wall. Coming out onto the street I finally breathe deeply. Saharan itineraries. Algiers, the 29th of December. Newspapers report departures yesterday morning from Tunis, Oran, Casablanca, and Algiers. 4 being the places of departure, the routes converge in part and reduce the number of Saharan crossings to 3. The first, the westernmost, follows the route Casablanca, or Oran or Algiers, Colombashar, Beni Abyss, Adrar, Regan, Bidon v. Tessalit, Bourm, Gao, Kano, Fort Lamy. This is the route that, leaving from Algiers, will be followed by the Clymene and the Southern Cross, of which I will be on board, and it is the route known as the Tanner's Ruft, the most Saharan of the three. Tanner's Ruft would mean, according to some, the land of fright, according to others, threshold of thirst, names, both of which were still full of meaning and menace until a few decades ago, until, in short, the desert began to be ploughed by car wheels. Even in 1920, times were still pioneering. Memorable was the feat carried out that year by General Le Perrin, who, at the command of a column of 30 vehicles, set out to cross the famous threshold of thirst. Of the 30 cars that left Algiers, only 9 succeeded in crossing the threshold, and only 3, 10%, made it back to Algiers. But it was not until a few years later that certain Giorgio and Maria Hart and Louis Audouin Dubreuil, in tracked vehicles, managed to make the first real crossing of the Sahara, covering 3,500 kilometers in the space of 20 days. One of their cars is now in the Musée des Invalides in Paris. It is a historical car. The second trans-Saharan itinerary moves instead from Algiers and passing through El Golia, in Salah, to Manrasset, Agadez and Zinda reaches Kano in British Nigeria and then Fort Lamy. From Tunis, on the other hand, comes the third itinerary which, touching Aouinet, Wenin, Brac, Fort Ladia, Traghen, Zwar and Lajo, also finally reaches Fort Lamy in French Equatorial Africa. Save for the possibility of taking a diversion through Kenya and Tanganyika, the route, from Victoria Falls onwards, is one and the same for everyone all the way to Cape Town. And it will accumulate, depending on the routes chosen, between 15,000 and 16,000 kilometers, between roads and tracks. No one knows, precisely, where the tracks begin and the roads end, and vice versa. On track, for example, are certainly the 3 Saharan routes. Apart from a few hundred initial kilometers in Tunisia and Algeria, on track entirely, should be the 800-kilometer stretch between Kano and Fort Lamy. Maps, which were distributed to the competitors today, instead mark roads through the whole of the Belgian Congo, Kenya, Tanganyika, Rhodesia and, of course, South Africa. What roads these are, we will later see for ourselves, as we travel along them. What is certain is that, in the maps themselves, several points are indicated in hatching and have the indication extremely difficult passage nearby. Regarding one stage, the Maiduguri, Fort Lamy, it is said that it cannot be excluded that the itinerary may be modified due to frequent flooding in the Lake Chad area. And although these are roads, ferries are marked in these maps by the dozens and dozens, there are even fords that are difficult to access and impassable in rainy weather. It thus depends on luck to find good weather where others have passed, with difficulty, in rainy weather. Numerous fords are indicated, again, in the variant of Kenya and Tanganyika, near Lake Nyasa, and in the Congo, near Lake Kivu. The road is so narrow that one-way traffic has been established there, ascending on even days and descending on odd days. In fact, with the exception of that Gleisner who claims to have come in 16.5 days from Cape Town to Algiers, none of the competitors is familiar with more than a few particular sections of the route. The rallye was organized, and it could not have been otherwise, by correspondence, the various governments of the territories traversed having ordered their commissioners to each stage location and having provided generic indications of track and road conditions. Generic and, I suppose, non-comparative. Roads rated good in Rhodesia, might be rated bad in Congo, and vice versa. A judgment on the roads and tracks can only be made with confidence once we have experienced them for ourselves.
Many thanks for listening. Please subscribe and share this audiobook.